Hey everybody, thanks for checking out this World of Tanks video, and thanks for playing World of Tanks in the Tier 9 Italian Medium Standard B here. Just had a fun match to watch. There will be a point of special interest later on, kind of in the middle of the match, that I'll talk about in particular. Here in the beginning, we're just kind of keeping an eye on the mini-map, of course. And we see we have some mediums and destroyers going south, with a couple of heavy tanks there, it looks like, taking up the rear of the southern flank. Heavy tank and a couple of destroyers still back at the capture circle. A couple of heavies pushing east there, or rather west in the north. Yeah, it looks like they've got a third heavy with them there. And a light tank kind of scout in the middle. I like to play the middle of this map, especially when we don't really have anybody else doing so. I'm in a top tier medium tank, pretty familiar with the map, so I might as well help the team make sure that the enemy team does not exploit an open middle to our disadvantage. So moving in slowly here, making sure that I, if anybody spots me up, doing my best to make sure that I'll have some kind of cover between my vehicle and any enemy vehicles that might have a line of fire on me. And come upon this destroyer here, oblivious to my presence. Go ahead and get an opening tracking shot, second shot, and a third shot there, finishing off that tier 7 tank destroyer. And that's a pretty fun example of this tank's firepower. There's that 3-round magazine. Each of those is doing 360 for the armor-piercing, composite rigid, and for the heat. And so at this point I do have, I don't know, like a 40-some second reload time to get all 3 rounds set in place, so I'm just falling way back, making sure that nothing is in a position to shoot at me, and that no enemy vehicles basically have much of a chance of chasing me down while I am in this state of reload, because if an enemy vehicle forces you to just keep shooting that third round of the burst over and over again, that's it's really bad. It's like a 14-second reload, I think it was there, but that's just really bad, like DPM rating. And here, looking back, I might have taken that shot in the moment, though. It's one of those things, especially with these auto reloaders, you do want to kind of be conservative taking your shots. You do want to make sure that the timing is working out for you, because generally speaking, you want to either be able to use a 3-round burst or maybe a 2-round burst in a way that's really advantageous for you. And generally speaking, what that means is just completely eliminating your target. Otherwise, you want to maintain just a single shot mode, just using that first round of the burst, and then allowing that first round to reload before firing it again. Again, unless you're using some kind of a burst fire to your advantage that's also safe for you, yeah, you just want to be doing the single shot mode, and that gives you the kind of the best damage per minute, or whatever that best damage over time rating that your vehicle can possibly get. Come upon this tier 7 destroyer IKV, get a nice shot into that vehicle, taking, looks like almost half of its health away. And again, letting that round load up because I don't have an immediate follow-up shot. Making sure those 2 vehicles aren't within my range, trying to get a good shot on this one here. And I notice at this point he's basically got a lock on me. Move forward behind that cover so that the center of mass is behind the cover. Basically looks like he pretty much had a lock onto the center of my mass and hits the dirt. Someone else gets a shot. I come around here, kind of feint a little bit, and also just keep an eye on what that enemy destroyer is doing. I push forward, use my mobility, and I do get a shot off before he's able to traverse and to get his gun into aim at me. It looks like he was mainly focusing on using that rock as cover, rather than necessarily trying to get a shot off. Alright, so I do notice that Centurion coming in there behind me. There's another destroyer back in there. I'm mainly just getting out of the way. There's something targeting me up. This vehicle has basically no armor to speak of. And I think it has going for it. It's a pretty good gun with especially that 3-round burst as a feature of it. Single shot, it's pretty slow on the reload, single shot to single shot, but it does have mobility, so I'm using what I have available to me. Get a good first shot in there, and there's a sloppy second shot for the miss. Reposition in case I need to get out of here quickly. Give myself a moment, aim up, and use that final round to eliminate the enemy vehicle, and again use my mobility, getting out of the way of being targeted up. Getting some distance while I get all 3 rounds in place, rather than finding myself in a position where I'm just using that last round over and over again. And again, that does look like it's about a 14-second reload. If you find yourself on a single shot 14-second reload, you're in a bad situation most of the time. So I noticed that heavy tank that was pursuing me. He was like at F5 last he was on the screen there on the mini-map. I'm thinking that's going to be my fight. Now here's where I needed to have been more careful, been more proactive, to have looked around to get an idea of what vehicle that was, and also where the health was on that vehicle. And here I find out it's actually a tier 9 vehicle at full health, and I've gotten myself in very close proximity with that enemy vehicle, and that's not to my advantage. It looks pretty clearly to me like that guy was just kind of push into me, knowing that he had a more or less an advantage. Rather than waiting for that to take place, I just go ahead and give myself an opportunity to use my mobility to get out of that situation. In the meantime, I do get 2 shots into him, kind of preserving my third for the sake of getting a faster reload on the other 2 rounds. While that enemy vehicle does get 3 shots on me, I do have an ally medium pushing into him. He had been sitting down there in the southeast corner. He came into the middle of the map. He does get a shot on this enemy heavy right there. Maybe got one off before, I'm not real clear. In the meantime, I do fully reload. That Emil is probably still reloading. I don't know exactly what the time frame is on those vehicles for the reloads, but I come back, put a couple quick shots into the back side of that enemy heavy, clear him out. So it worked out, I mean, in part because I used my mobility to get some distance away from him and give me a chance to use my reload, but also in large part because my ally came up there. That was another thing that I kind of wanted to focus on here, was just that component of ally support that, occupied that Emil, kind of kept that Emil from pursuing me, really. Also got 1 or 2 shots in there. I'm not sure exactly how many that Leo got into the Emil. So that team play there was a really big deal and a really big help for me there. I don't know that it was absolutely necessary, but it was definitely very, very helpful and might have made the difference for me. In addition to that, it's a really, really obvious example of when you'd want to, why it's important to keep an eye on the enemies as well as your allies around you, and not only what they are, but also kind of what their hit point level is. That's useful information to be aware of. A single shot, for example, is much safer to engage with single shot, enemy vehicle with a single shot level of hit points for you. Much easier to deal with, and allows you to be much more confident to engage with that enemy than, say, an enemy that at full health or close to it, or an enemy that you know is going to take several shots of yours to get rid of. So that's something to keep in mind of there. And with your allies, again, similarly, a bottom tier ally is going to be, less effective support for you than, say, a top tier ally would be, and an ally that's got 50 hit points is going to be much less meaningful support than would be an ally that's got full health or close to it. So whether you're talking about allies or talking about enemies, this is gathering that intel on the vehicles around you, near and far for that matter. It's just worth doing. It's worth having in mind, worth being aware of, so that you can plot out your course of action, so that you can determine what you're going to do, where you're going to go, and what you're going to do after you get there. So this is just kind of a fun match with a couple cool little things to look at there, gathering the intel, and also some ally support. Thanks for taking a look at this World of Tanks video, and thanks for playing World of Tanks.